On today's episode of Inside Man United, the headlines. United find buyer for exile star Ten Hag doesn't trust. Will Sancho end up in Serie A? Ineos and Manchester United ask Gary Neville to help regenerate Old Trafford. Sir Jim Ratcliffe says United is not set up for success and needs to change its culture. And Ineos and United baffled by Newcastle's compensation claim for Dan Ashworth. And finally, Sir Jim Ratcliffe breaks his silence on Mason Greenwood and clarifies his stance on a potential return. All that coming up. Hello everybody, welcome back to Inside Man United. My name is Rowan Brennan and thank you once again for joining. If you are new around these parts, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you like the content. So, a very good morning to everyone. I hope you're well and, you know, mostly through the week now. The weekend's on its way and another round of juicy matches. I might actually do a preview for the next United game. I haven't done a preview in a while, so I've just been focusing on the news at the moment. And speaking of which, we're going to kick off with a story that Juventus are very interested in Jadon Sancho with Federico Chiesa's future, who is their right-sided winger, with his future up in the air. And a couple of injuries actually this season as well. And I did an episode months ago on United potentially being linked with Federico Chiesa, a very, very good player. He's having an excellent season as well. And Juventus seem to have found their flow again under the once great and powerful Max Allegri when he was managing a very powerful, very successful Juventus side, all conquering under Jean-Claude Blanc, I believe, when he was at Juventus before going to PSG. And so yeah, there's interest from Serie A in our boy Jadon. And Sancho, he's been getting a bit of criticism from the German press as well. He has not been particularly impressive since going back to Dortmund. He wasn't great last night in their Champions League match against PSV Eindhoven. Missed a bunch of chances on his return after a little niggle in their Bundesliga game prior to that. He just doesn't really seem... I mean, there's a bit of the Dele Allis about Jadon Sancho where I just think his head is gone, and I just don't know what's happening to the kid, because he's got all the ability in the world, but he doesn't seem to even able to grab this opportunity to, you know, to even stick two fingers up to Ten Hag and everyone at the club. Do you know what I mean? So it's a bit of a strange one. So yeah, he's made 5 appearances for the Bundesliga giant so far, contributing 2 assists in the process. He's supposed to be very happy back there, but reports suggested he won't be rejoining them on a permanent deal. Dortmund don't have even close to the amount of revenue that it would take to bring him in. Number one, of the transfer fee, but his wages are going to be astronomical. Now, not that Serie A is exactly awash with huge amounts of capital either, but you know, they'd be in a better position to sign Sancho than anyone in the Bundesliga, including Bayern Munich. So he's currently on 300 grand a week. Dortmund can't afford the wages, but apparently, according to Goal, Juventus are interested in signing Sancho, are ready to pay 40 million euro. It's not the worst, especially if we're able to get rid of those wages as well. The wages, as is the case with so many of our signings, hamper our ability to offload players we no longer need. So we get absolutely hammered on the transfer fee in order to be able to cover the fact that they're going to be losing an absolute ton in wages as well. We saw this with Harry Maguire as well when they were looking to get him out to West Ham. And I don't blame players. I mean, you've signed the contract, you owe me the money. I'm not just going to quit. You'd be mad. So short is the career of footballers. If you have got a lot of money put on the table, you make sure you take every dime of it. So Juve were one of the clubs credited with trying to get Sancho before he ultimately went to Dortmund in the end. I don't understand why he'd go back to Dortmund if there was a chance to go to Juventus. I know it's familiar ground, but it's a weaker league. They're a weaker team. I'd certainly want to play for Juventus over Dortmund, but you know, maybe the pre-existing relationship helped there. The Italian club have a good relationship with United, having you know, Evra and Pogba as two players that we've dealt with them. So Allegri looking to sign a new winger in the summer due to uncertainty over the future of Federico Chiesa, who's been linked with Liverpool, Tottenham, and Newcastle as well. He's a very, very good player, and I've no doubt he's going to be moving on in the summer, but not before he might help secure a Scudetto for the old lady of Turin. So that's it. Maybe maybe finding a buyer for good old Sancho in Serie A. I think he'd do well there. I mean, to be honest, I think it's at the level of the German league, generally maybe a little bit higher. And you know, a lot of players that have not worked out in the Premiership, especially at United, whether it's Darmian, Mkhitaryan, Lukaku, obviously as well. When they've gone over to Italy, they've performed quite well. Tammy Abraham, when he was fit and when he first got his move to Roma first, again did very well. Alexis Sanchez, you know, kind of reinvigorated his career there as well, having failed at United, not in the league obviously, but it's just got a pace that I think is more suitable to players that are maybe looking to find their form again and maybe find the league a little bit too fast, a bit too hot to handle. So this is a really interesting one. So United are going to approach one Mr. Gary Neville to help out with the building of a potential new stadium. And as you may or may not know, Gary Neville is very invested, not just financially, but also, you know, with his heart and his soul in the local Manchester area. And he's got developments there. I think the Academy Hotel and the Class of '92 University or something like that. He has in the surrounding area. So they want to talk to him about how to best develop it. And I welcome it. I think there's a wealth of knowledge and joy and desire in Gary Neville that I think could be very, very applicable. And I'm so sad to see few ex-pros in the halls of Manchester United, like you see at so many other clubs, particularly in Italy. You see it in the Netherlands and other clubs as well. You know, previous legends are in some, and not just these wanky kind of, oh, he's a club ambassador. Like, what does that even mean? You want people there in the day-to-day, you know, adding pillars of strength and history to the club, particularly players of his ilk. So he's been invited by the club to join a newly devised committee, which will make plans and key decisions on how the tired stadium should be improved. Now, whether that's a complete knockdown and teardown or a bit of lipstick, who knows? Neville's open to the idea of participating so long as his role doesn't conflict with stuff going on at Sky. Perfectly reasonable. So Sir Jim Ratcliffe's purchase of the club was confirmed on Tuesday evening. And yeah, Neville's been a very staunch critic of the Glazer family. So, but again, everything has been separated. Glazers, you just sit back and enjoy your dividends and your money and let people who actually know what they're doing run the club. So I don't think the Glazers are going to care too much who they get in. The Glazers seem bulletproof to all sorts of criticism and hate. It hasn't worked yet to get rid of them, and I don't think they personally really care, which makes you more angry, because they're just so wealthy and so aloof and so disconnected from the club that even when you're shouting in their faces, they don't hear you. But, you know, such is life. Glazers taking a step back, and Ratcliffe's Ineos group are now leading much of the operational aspects of United, which we all know. Ratcliffe considering whether to renovate the existing stadium, as Liverpool have done, or at considerably more cost, whether to build a new state-of-the-art stadium across town. Abu Dhabi owners have invested hundreds of millions into regenerating the area around the Etihad Stadium, and I think that's why they want to get Neville on board. Just him being a local lad, being invested, being a former player, what he has to say, I think, could be very, very valuable in terms of what United can do, not just for the club, but for the surrounding area and the community, because a lot of the time football clubs are the lifeblood and the heartbeat of the communities in which they exist. So it's very, very important that you keep that in mind, and you're not just some gross monolith of capitalism that, you know, pretends to be a sporting icon while, you know, taking a big dump on the people around you. So I think it's going to be a very, very good move, and I certainly welcome it. So yeah, it'd be great to see Gary getting involved in that. So Mr. Ratcliffe up again says, United culture not set up for success. Well, if ever the obvious statement of the year candidate was going to be created, I think that's one right there. So he says he needs to embark on a culture transformation at United because the club is not geared for success. The British billionaire's minority shareholding purchase was complete on Tuesday, which you already know. Omar Barada, we know he's joining. Dan Ashworth is coming in. That still needs to be ironed out because he's technically on gardening leave, and Newcastle want a fat sack of cash for the inconvenience and the emotional distress of losing him to a rival, which, to be honest, is kind of understandable. But they did pinch him from Brighton, and Brighton allowed it to happen without much of a fuss. But now Newcastle are absolutely screaming and throwing their toys out of the pram because it's happened to them. So that's always interesting. And Southampton's director of football, Jason Wilcox, as well, as someone that United are going after. So they're kind of putting together a bit of a super team, a bit of a footballing Avengers, it would seem. So a deputy chief executive is also wanted, as Ratcliffe aims to make world-class appointments to help facilitate change on the pitch. He goes on to say, we have to look at the organisation of the club because it is not good at the moment. He told Belgian newspaper De Tijd, I imagine that's how it's pronounced. Apologies to any Dutch or Dutch speakers out there, and I've butchered that. Take the head coach, for example. He must report directly to the CEO. That is no longer possible in a modern football organization. We then have to ensure that, I don't know what that means. He must report directly. Is that means that that's something he should do? Or it's something that he is doing or he's been told to do at the moment, and that's no longer possible in a football? I don't quite understand the context of what that statement really means. That can be interpreted in a couple of different ways, both at either ends of the spectrum as well. So I'm not really sure what that means. He goes on, we then have to ensure that the right people end up in the right positions. Every person in management must be world class. And then it is important to create a positive, supportive, friendly and high quality environment. That culture was missing before. Only in such an environment can you get the best out of sportsmen. If successful, the results will follow automatically. That's the plan, and I believe in it. Good, a man of conviction and speaks a lot of sense. And to be honest, I mean, I think people should be very, very happy with the level of professionalism that Ineos are coming in to this program with. And to be honest, I'm far happier to have them there than Qatar, because Qatar, well, they have bucket loads of money, as we've seen before, tons of money with absolutely no brain power or abilities towards the actual industry that you're in, mean the square root of fuck all. So it's impressive to see these guys coming in. I think they really know what they're doing. And you can see the success that Nice is starting to have in Ligue 1 as well. They're starting to kind of, you know, reap the fruits from the seeds they've sown beforehand. So Ratcliffe has played an active role forming the new structure alongside Ineos Director of Sport Brailsford and Chief Executive of Sport Jean-Claude Blanc, who will take positions at United's board. Barada wants to form a tight management team at the top of the club to help bring it into a new era. So yeah, I think, yeah, well said by Sir Jim, and it looks like they're well underway to putting that super team together to make sure that standards are reintroduced into the club and it becomes a football club again, not a big fat cash cow that sometimes plays football and typically pretty badly. So yeah, encouraging stuff. Here we have the scowling Dan Ashworth here at the MEN Manchester Evening News. And oh, we've got a bit of a wonky page here. So United are baffled by the compensation claim by Newcastle. So United are baffled by Newcastle's posturing over the expected departure of sporting director Dan Ashworth. Of course, he's been approached. I think he's explained he wants to leave. Newcastle have put him on a gardening leave. They've already said their farewells and their goodbyes publicly. So I think they're just, they're totally prepared for him to leave. But whether they're going to allow him to work for a rival, of course they're going to eventually, but they're going to have to get some cheddar cheese from United in order to let that happen. So Ashworth was placed on gardening leave on Monday amid his desire to join United, less than 2 years on from officially starting his role at Newcastle. So yeah, Manchester Evening News revealed last week Ashworth wants to join United and he's the only candidate the Ineos group wants. So Paul Mitchell had been linked for a very long time from Monaco. A bunch of other names had been mooted as well. Believe a gentleman from Crystal Palace. I always forget his name. But listen, Ashworth seems to be the main man and he was probably the best of all the candidates. And I think United should be very happy. United are perplexed by Newcastle's rationale of demanding up to 5 times the amount they paid Brighton in compensation to recruit Ashworth in February 2022. Brighton reputedly demanded $5 million from Newcastle for Ashworth, but eventually settled for a lower figure. So Newcastle under pressure to meet the Premier League's profitability and sustainability rules, and United are adamant that they will not ease a Premier League rival's financial issues. They've been easing a lot of other clubs' financial issues, I would imagine, over the course of the last 10 years with their transfer fees. Ashworth is unlikely to have a bearing on United's summer transfer activity as they usually finalise a short list of targets in January. I don't believe that for a fucking second. What, so they're only going to have him getting ready for the January window next year, where we don't typically buy anyone? There's no way he's not going to have input and say on who United are going to be going for this summer. That's a crock of shit. I don't understand. Why would they be so desperate to bring him in now? Why not wait till the summer to approach him and then, you know, have him for the January window or get him prepped for the next summer window? What's the point in doing this in the middle of the league if you're not going to have him ready to do something for you in the summer? that makes zero sense. So I think that's a crock of bollocks, that paragraph, to be quite honest. Newcastle Chief Executive Darren Eel said on Monday, "We are naturally disappointed that Dan has chosen to leave. However, our exciting journey doesn't stop. We thank Dan for his efforts at Newcastle," etc., etc. Usual blurb. United Football Director John Murtough could be retained in a more administrative role. Of course, Richard Arnold today, I believe, or was it yesterday, stepped down officially from his position. He resigned. So he's gone now. But he's going to be in a more administrative role here, John Murtough, and that's in the balance as to whether Murtough, who joined in 2013, remains under the club's new power brokers. Apparently, Murtough has a lot of skills and a lot of talents in certain areas. I just, he's obviously going to be dirtied with the work and legacy of Woodward, and obviously Arnold after him as well. So whether he is kept, who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if he's just gotten rid of, because they just want a completely clean house. But we'll see how that goes. So Sir Jim, he's been given a couple of interviews recently and being a lot more vocal than he has recently. So there's our boy Mason Greenwood doing very well over at Getafe. I think it's 5 goals and 5 assists or 6 assists in 21 games. So not bad. 10 goal contributions in 20 games. See, the sad thing is that United definitely need a backup striker and we need a right winger, and Greenwood plays both of those positions. So he can slot in as a centre forward when we want to give Højlund a rest, and that's probably where he naturally wants to play, so there can be some healthy competition there. And of course, he's played so well on the right-hand side for United for a very, very long time. So when Sancho and Antony and Pellistri are gone, it's just ready-made for him to slot in there, and he fills 2 positions, and 2 positions that we need to address. So, I mean, it's going to be very, very expensive to sell Greenwood on the cheap and then find a striker and also a right winger when we could just keep him. But I understand people's objections to keeping him. I fully understand the arguments from both sides of the camp. And yeah, it's a tough decision, one that I would not look forward to making myself. So new United investor Jim Ratcliffe has clarified he will make a fresh decision on the future of Mason Greenwood. A lot of people seem to think it's signed, sealed, delivered, it's done. United are going to accept a £40 million bid from Barcelona or Atletico or Real, and it's done. He's out the door. And a lot of people were very happy about that. But to be honest, from what I've seen on Twitter and now and other areas, is that there's far more support for Greenwood to come back to the club than might be, publicly perceived. It's not a popular stance to say you want Greenwood to come back. So anyone that does, they're not going to publicly say so unless they're going to be opening themselves up to massive amounts of scrutiny, especially people who might have a following or are any sort of a YouTuber or influencer with, tens of thousands of followers. It's a very risky stance to take, to say, oh yeah, I'd have him back, et cetera, et cetera. So you're always going to hear the no's a lot more than you are the yeses, but I think there's a very silent and strong part of the fan base that would be perfectly fine with him coming back. So Greenwood, 22, has not played for United since January 2022 after he was arrested. We all know what those charges were. United had intended to reintegrate Greenwood back into the first team, but abandoned their plans amid a backlash from supporters. So he's at Getafe now. So when he was asked to kind of give his comments and thoughts on the Greenwood issue, he says, I can talk about the principle. I'm not going to talk about Mason. So it was a very high-level discussion. Ratcliffe told journalists at the Ineos office in Knightsbridge, I'm familiar with it. The principle is the important one because we will have other issues going forward. You're dealing with young people. They've not always been brought up in the best circumstances, who are very talented. They've got lots of money and they don't always have maybe the guidance they should have. What we need to do when we have issues like that is we need to understand what the facts are, the real facts, not the hype, what the real facts are. So he's kind of saying, like, we're not going to, we're going to believe in what is actually real, not what's being said in the papers or on social media or what people believe to be true. Then we need to make a fair decision in the light of the club's values. That's what we need to do, and that's how we will do it. We'll make a decision, yeah, correct, and we'll justify it one way or another. So whatever we do, we're going to justify it. And to be honest, there is justifications and there's condemnation for both decisions. Some maybe more so than others. But again, you can draw arguments for both. All I can do is talk about the principle of how we will approach it. Is he the right type of footballer? Is he a good person or not? When specifically asked if he was not closing the door on a return for Greenwood, he replied, well, he's a United footballer. We're in charge of football. So the answer is yeah, we have to make a decision. It's quite clear. There is no decision that's been made. He's on loan, obviously. We've got 1 or 2 footballers we have to deal with that are on our books, and we need to make a decision. We'll do that. The other one is probably Antony. But the process will be understood. But the process will be understand the facts, not the hype, and then try and come to a fair decision on the basis of advice, which basically, is he a good guy or not? Could he play sincerely for Manchester United well, and we'd be comfortable with it, and the fans would be comfortable with it? So a very kind of non-committal, but still a very frank and sensible explanation. But to me, that sounds like, you know, some of the words he's kind of chosen there means that, to me, I think they're probably leaning towards a potential return for Greenwood. But again, it's somewhere there. It's something that they're going to have to tread on very likely. But what are your thoughts? Everyone's got an opinion on this. So I'd be very interested to know what any viewers of this channel think of the situation. Would you have him back? Do you think it's an absolute disgrace that we'd even consider that? Thoughts in the comments section. And what do you think of Gary Neville coming back and giving a bit of advice on what we should do in the local area? I think it's great. Jadon Sancho to Juventus. I don't think anyone cares really where he goes as long as the price is right. But, you know, Juventus is a good club. They should have a few quid, although Italy isn't exactly cash rich. They should be able to afford someone like Jadon Sancho, I think. So that is it for the main headlines today. As always, thank you very, very much for joining me. And if you've got the time, please hit that like button, hit subscribe, hit that notification button so you'll get an alert anytime I've got a new episode out. Please put your thoughts in the comment section. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking about the stadium development, Mason Greenwood, Sancho to Juventus. And as always, I will see you on the next one.